The courtroom door felt heavier than it should have. I pushed it open in my only good suit, the one I had bought for job interviews 3 years ago. My parents sat in the front row, my brother next to them, all three of them in designer clothes I could never afford. Mom saw me first. She leaned over and whispered something to Dad. He rolled his eyes. Actually rolled his eyes like I was an inconvenience, like I was wasting their time by showing up to defend myself. Their lawyer shuffled papers, confident. The kind of confidence that comes with a $500 an hour retainer. The judge had not entered yet. Did they really think I would just hand it over? That I would walk in, apologize, and sign away everything Grandpa left me? I set my briefcase on the defendant's table. 3 folders inside, tabs color-coded. They had no idea what was in those folders. Before we see what is inside those folders, drop a comment. Where are you listening from, and what time is it there? Hit like if you have ever been the one everyone underestimated. To understand why I was standing there, you have to understand the architecture of my family. I was not just the middle child or the quiet one. I was the scapegoat. It was not a role I chose, it was a role assigned to me before I could even speak. My brother, Hunter, was the golden child. He was charming, loud, and expensive. When he turned 16, my parents bought him a brand new SUV. When I turned 16, I got a bus pass. When he went to college, they paid full tuition plus a living stipend for a luxury condo. When I went, I lived in a basement apartment with mold in the bathroom and worked nights at a warehouse to pay my own way. I never complained. I learned early on that complaining only gave them ammunition. Silence was safer. Silence meant I could observe. And what I observed was a family built on appearances. My parents, Robert and Linda, were obsessed with image. They lived in a sprawling colonial in the best neighborhood, drove leased luxury cars, and talked loudly at country club dinners about their successful son. They never talked about me. I was the glitch in their perfect matrix. The daughter who did not fit the mold. But Grandpa Arthur saw me. He was my father's father, a man who had built his fortune from nothing, not through charm, but through relentless work and shrewd investment. He hated the way my parents spent money. He hated their pretension. He saw through Hunter's charm in 5 seconds flat. Arthur was the only person who ever asked me about my grades, my job, my life. We would sit on his back porch for hours, drinking iced tea, and he would tell me stories about business, about law, about reading people. You listen more than you talk, Sophia, he told me once. That is a superpower. Most people are too busy broadcasting to notice the signal. When Arthur died, the grief was a physical weight. I lost my only ally. My parents and Hunter performed their grief perfectly at the funeral, wearing black designer outfits and dabbing dry eyes. I stood in the back, numb. Then came the reading of the will. We all gathered in Arthur's attorney's office. My parents were already mentally spending the inheritance. Hunter was talking about buying a boat. The attorney, a serious man named Mr. Henderson, started reading. It was standard at first. Small bequests to charities, personal items to friends. Then came the assets. To my son Robert and his wife Linda, I leave the family home and its contents. My parents smiled. A $2 million property. Not bad. To my grandson Hunter, I leave my vintage car collection. Hunter pumped his fist. The cars were worth maybe $300,000. And to my granddaughter Sophia, Mr. Henderson paused, looking over his glasses at me. I leave the residue of my estate, including my investment portfolio, my patent royalties, and my liquid cash assets. The room went silent. The residue sounded like leftovers. Scraps. My mother actually let out a small, pitying sigh. Until Mr. Henderson continued. The current value of these assets is approximately $3.5 million. The silence shattered. My mother gasped. My father stood up so fast his chair tipped over. Hunter looked like he had been slapped. That is a mistake, my father said, his voice shaking. You misread it. Sophia gets the scraps. We get the portfolio. The will is clear, Mr. Henderson said calmly. Sophia is the sole beneficiary of the liquid estate. I sat there, stunned. $3.5 million. Grandpa Arthur had left me everything that mattered. He had not just given me money, he had given me freedom. But freedom has a price. We left the office in a tense cavalcade. My parents did not speak to me. Hunter glared at me in the rearview mirror. I went back to my basement apartment and stared at the wall, waiting for the other shoe to drop. I did not have to wait long. 2 days later, my mother called. Her voice was sweet, that dangerous, sugary tone she used when she wanted something. Sophia, darling, we are having a family dinner tonight. Just us. We need to talk about Grandpa's wishes. I knew it was a trap. But I also knew I had to face them. I put on my best armor, a thrifted blazer and a neutral expression, and went to the house. They were waiting in the living room. My father had a document on the coffee table. My mother patted the seat next to her. Hunter was pacing by the fireplace. We have been thinking, my father began, his voice reasonable, paternal. Grandpa was getting old. He made mistakes. He obviously did not mean to burden you with that kind of responsibility. $3 million is a lot for a young woman to manage. It is dangerous, my mother added, her eyes wide with fake concern. People will take advantage of you. You do not know how to handle investments. You have never had money. So, my father tapped the document. We have had our family attorney draft this. It is a family harmony agreement. It puts the money into a family trust. We will manage it. We will invest it properly. And we will give you a generous allowance. $5,000 a month. You won't have to work at that warehouse anymore. You can just be. I looked at the document. It was a transfer of assets. If I signed, I would be handing over everything Grandpa gave me. I would be signing myself back into their control, permanently. $5,000 a month. Enough to live, but not enough to leave. Not enough to be free. I looked at their faces. Expectant. Greedy. They did not see a daughter or a sister. They saw a bank account. I did not argue. I did not scream. I did not cry. I remembered Grandpa's words. Listen more than you talk. I realized in that moment that my silence was a weapon. If I argued, I gave them something to fight against. If I stayed silent, they would fill the void with their own arrogance. They would assume I was weak. They would get sloppy. I need time to think, I said quietly. Of course, my mother said, patting my hand. Take the weekend. But do not take too long. We need to secure the assets. I walked out of that house with the unsigned agreement in my bag. I did not go home. I went to the library. I started researching. I researched trusts, probate law, conservatorship. I researched my family. And that is when the real war began. The escalation was swift and brutal. 72 hours after I walked out of the family dinner, a process server found me at my apartment. He handed me a thick envelope. Inside was a petition for guardianship of the estate. My parents were not just trying to trick me anymore, they were trying to legally erase me. The petition was a work of fiction. 14 pages detailing my reckless spending, instability, and inability to manage complex affairs. They claimed I was a danger to myself financially. They asked the court to appoint my mother, Linda, as the conservator of my assets. They wanted control of everything, the trust, the investments, even my bank account. I sat on my floor, surrounded by the legal paperwork, and felt a cold knot of fear tighten in my stomach. This was public record. Anyone could see it. And someone did. The next morning, my boss called me into her office. I worked as a junior analyst at a logistics firm, a job I had fought hard to get. She looked uncomfortable. Sophia, we received a notification about a legal filing involving you. It alleges financial incompetence. It is a family dispute, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. It is not true. I believe you, she said, and I could tell she did not. But until this is resolved, we have to put you on administrative leave. We handle sensitive client accounts. We cannot take the risk. I walked out of the building carrying a box of my things. Suspended. Humiliated. My income was gone. My reputation was damaged. My family had taken the one thing I had built for myself. I drove home in a daze. I wanted to scream. I wanted to drive to my parents' house and beg them to stop. But then I remembered the way my father had rolled his eyes. The way my mother had sighed with pity. Begging would not work. They fed on weakness. I went into my bedroom and pulled a heavy, iron key from my jewelry box. It belonged to Grandmother Rose's antique safe box, which I kept at the back of my closet. Rose was Arthur's wife, a woman of steel who had taught me how to sew and how to keep a poker face. She had left me the box when she died, years before Arthur. Inside the box were old letters, a pearl necklace, and a thick envelope I had not opened since Arthur's funeral. I opened it now. It contained the original, signed copy of the trust. Not the family harmony version my parents had drafted, but the real one. I started reading. Page 1, page 2, standard legalese. Then I turned to page 7. And my breath caught in my throat. Section 7, subsection D, forfeiture clause. If any beneficiary under this trust initiates or participates in any legal action to contest the validity of this trust, or to deprive another beneficiary of their designated share, said beneficiary shall immediately forfeit their entire interest in the trust estate. Their share shall be redistributed to the remaining beneficiaries. It was nuclear. Arthur had known. He had anticipated their greed. He had built a trap into the very foundation of his legacy. If they sued to take my share, they lost everything. The house. The cars. The portfolio. All of it. I sat back, the document trembling in my hands. This was not just a defense. It was an eviction notice. But I was not done. I needed to understand why. Why were they risking everything for my share? $3.5 million was a lot, but they had their own money. They had the house, the cars, the status. Why destroy their daughter for cash they did not need? I opened my laptop. I was not just an analyst, I was good at finding patterns. I started digging. Public records are terrifyingly accessible if you know where to look. I started with Hunter. The golden child. He had launched a tech startup 2 years ago. My parents had invested heavily. He drove a Porsche. He posted photos from Tulum and Aspen. I pulled his business filings. Dissolved. 6 months ago. I pulled court records. 3 lawsuits from unpaid vendors. A default judgment for $850,000. Hunter was not a successful entrepreneur. He was a fraud. Then I checked my parents. I pulled the property records for their house. The house Arthur had left them free and clear. There was a lien on it. A second mortgage, taken out 18 months ago. $1.2 million. They were leveraged to the hilt. They were drowning. I sat back, the glow of the screen illuminating my small, dark apartment. The realization hit me like a physical blow. They were not powerful. They were desperate. The country club dinners, the designer clothes, the new cars, it was all a facade. They had burned through their own inheritance and now they were coming for mine. And suddenly, the guilt I had been carrying, the tiny voice that said maybe I am selfish, maybe I should share, vanished. It evaporated. I was not dealing with parents who loved me but were misguided. I was dealing with narcissists who were collapsing. When the golden child fails, the system becomes unstable. To survive, the parents must cannibalize the scapegoat. They needed my money to plug the holes in their sinking ship. They needed to consume me to maintain their delusion. I looked at the trust document again. Section 7, subsection D. Grandmother Rose used to say, truth is the only thing you can't fake. I was not stealing their inheritance. I was the guardian of the truth. I was the only one honoring Arthur's wishes. He did not want his life's work wasted on Hunter's gambling debts or my parents' vanity. He wanted it to build something real. I picked up my phone. I dialed a number I had not called in years. Thomas? I said when he answered. It is Sophia. I have a job for you. Thomas was a lawyer. Not a good one. He was lazy, arrogant, and sloppy. I knew this because I had briefly interned at his firm in college. He never read the fine print. He assumed he was the smartest person in the room. Years ago, when my parents asked for a recommendation for a family attorney, I had anonymously suggested Thomas. I knew that if they ever came for me, I wanted them represented by someone incompetent. I wanted a Trojan horse. And now, looking at their petition, I saw Thomas's signature at the bottom. It worked. He had not read the trust. He had not seen Section 7, subsection D, he had led them right into the minefield. I spent the next 3 nights drafting. I did not hire a lawyer. I did not need one. I wrote a counter-petition. I cited the fraud. I cited the debts. I cited the forfeiture clause. I attached the forensic accounting of their financial ruin. Then I walked over to my printer. I printed out a document I had received 6 months ago. A certificate from the State Bar Association. Sophia Miller. Admitted to practice law. I framed it. I put it in my briefcase. I was ready. The morning of the hearing, the sky was a bruised purple, heavy with rain that refused to fall. I drove to the courthouse in silence. No radio. No podcasts. Just the hum of the engine and the steady, rhythmic beating of my own heart. I was not nervous. Nervousness implies uncertainty. I was certain. I walked into the courtroom at 8:55. My parents were already there, sitting in the front row like they were attending a graduation. My mother wore a cream suit that probably cost more than my car. My father was checking his watch, looking bored. Hunter was scrolling on his phone, slouching, radiating the casual arrogance of someone who has never faced a consequence he could not charm his way out of. Thomas, their attorney, gave me a pitying smile. Sophia, he said, slick and condescending. If you are here to sign the agreement, we can save the judge some time. It is really for the best. I did not look at him. I walked past them to the defendant's table and set down my briefcase. The sound of the latch clicking open echoed in the quiet room. All rise, the bailiff called out. Judge Walters entered. She was a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She took her seat and opened the file. In the matter of the estate of Arthur Miller, she read. Petition for guardianship of the estate. She looked over her glasses at the plaintiff's table. Mr. Blackwood, you represent the petitioners? I do, Your Honor. Thomas stood up, buttoning his jacket. We are asking for an emergency order. My clients are deeply concerned about their daughter's financial stability and mental state. We believe immediate intervention is necessary to protect the assets. The judge turned to me. She looked at my empty table, then at me standing alone. Ms. Miller, she said gently. I see you are here without counsel. Given the serious nature of these allegations, would you like a continuance to retain an attorney? The room went silent. My mother leaned forward, a mask of tragic concern plastered on her face, ready to nod sympathetically at my helplessness. Hunter smirked. I stood up. I did not smooth my skirt. I did not fidget. I looked directly at Judge Walters. No, Your Honor, I said. My voice did not shake. I do not need a continuance. I am appearing as counsel of record. Thomas laughed. A short, sharp bark of amusement. Your Honor, the respondent is a warehouse worker. She is clearly confused about the legal process. I am not confused, I said, cutting him off. I was admitted to the state bar in January of this year. My bar number is 309421. The silence that followed was not quiet, it was heavy. It sucked the air out of the room. I saw the blood drain from my brother's face. My mother's mouth opened, but no sound came out. My father froze, his eyes narrowing as he tried to process the shift in reality. Thomas looked like he had swallowed a lemon. Is this true? The judge asked, typing into her computer. A moment later, she nodded slowly. The record confirms it. Ms. Miller is a licensed attorney. Proceed, counselor. Thank you, Your Honor. I picked up the first folder. I am filing a counterpetition for the immediate removal of the petitioners as beneficiaries, based on fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, and violation of the trust's no contest clause. Objection. Thomas sputtered. This is ambush. It is not an ambush, I said coldly. It is the law. I would like to direct the court's attention to Exhibit A. I handed the bailiff the original trust document. Section 7, subsection D, the forfeiture clause. It states clearly that any beneficiary who initiates legal action to deprive another beneficiary of their designated share forfeits their entire interest in the estate. The judge read the clause. She looked at Thomas. Mr. Blackwood, did you review the original trust document before filing this petition? Thomas stammered. My clients assured me. He had not. He was the Trojan horse, and he had just opened the gates. Furthermore, I continued, opening the second folder. I have evidence that the petitioners attempted to defraud this court. Exhibit B. I laid out the forensic accounting report. The petitioners claim they want to protect the assets for the family. In reality, they are insolvent. My brother has outstanding judgments totaling $850,000. My parents have encumbered the family home with a second mortgage of $1.2 million. They are not protectors, Your Honor. They are debtors attempting to raid the trust to satisfy their creditors. My mother let out a sob. That is private. How dare you? Order, the judge snapped. And finally, I said, pulling the last document from the folder. The smoking gun. Exhibit C, a forensic analysis of the Family Harmony Agreement amendment my parents submitted to the bank last week. The notary stamp is dated 3 years ago. But the paper stock? It was not manufactured until 6 months ago. I looked at my parents. They looked small. Shrunken. The arrogance was gone, replaced by the terrifying realization that they were not the hunters anymore. They were the prey. This is fraud, Your Honor, I said. They forged an amendment to embezzle funds before the estate was even settled. Under the terms of the trust, and under state law, they have forfeited their right to everything. The house. The cars. The remaining portfolio. It all reverts to the estate. Judge Walters looked at the evidence. She looked at my parents, who were now whispering frantically to a very pale Thomas. Mr. Blackwood, the judge said, her voice like ice. Do you have a defense for this? Thomas stood up. He looked at me, then at the judge. He closed his briefcase. Your Honor, he said quietly. I request a recess to consult with my clients regarding potential criminal exposure. Denied, Judge Walters said. I have seen enough. The petition for guardianship is dismissed with prejudice. The counterpetition is granted. The forfeiture clause is enforced effective immediately. The petitioners are stripped of all interest in the Arthur Miller Trust. She banged the gavel. The sound rang out like a gunshot. My mother screamed. Not a word, just a sound of pure, unadulterated loss. Hunter put his head in his hands. My father just stared at me, his face gray. I did not look back. I packed my folders. I clicked my briefcase shut. And I walked out the door. 30 days later, the eviction notice was served. I did not go to watch. I did not need to see them moving their designer furniture into a rental truck. I did not need to see Hunter arguing with the repossession agent taking his Porsche. The victory was not in the spectacle, it was in the silence. The forfeiture was absolute. The house, the cars, the investment accounts, everything Grandpa Arthur had left them was reclaimed by the estate. Per the trust's contingency instructions, since there were no other eligible family beneficiaries, the forfeited assets were liquidated. I took the money, nearly $4 million in total assets, and I did exactly what Arthur would have wanted. I did not keep it. I did not want their tainted share. I established the Arthur Miller Scholarship Fund. Full tuition, room, and board for first-generation college students who worked while in school. Students who had grit. Students who were invisible to everyone else. The first recipients were announced 3 months later. I sat in the audience, watching a young man from the same neighborhood where I had lived in that basement apartment walk across the stage. He looked tired but proud. He looked like I used to. Knowing that he would not have to choose between textbooks and groceries healed something in me that I had not realized was broken. As for my own share, the $3.5 million that started it all, I invested it. I bought a small, quiet condo in the city with a view of the river. I furnished it slowly, not with expensive things to impress people, but with things I loved. A comfortable chair. A bookshelf filled with legal texts. A frame for my bar certificate. I opened my own practice. Estate planning for families in crisis. I became the lawyer I wished I had had. The one who reads the fine print. My family tried to reach out, of course. Desperation makes people persistent. My mother sent emails. Long, rambling monologues about how family forgives, and money is not everything. She sent photos of them in their new 2-bedroom apartment, trying to weaponize her reduced circumstances to trigger my guilt. I did not block her. I just filed the emails into a folder marked evidence. I never replied. My silence was no longer a shield, it was a wall. My father sent a letter through a new lawyer, threatening to sue for elder abuse. It was a bluff. My response was a single page, a copy of the judge's ruling and a reminder of the forensic report on the forgery. I never heard from them again. Hunter was the last to try. 6 months after the verdict, my phone buzzed with a text. Hey. I am working at a dealership now. Sales. It is humbling. Look, I know I messed up. Can we get coffee? Just as brother and sister. No agenda. I stared at the screen. I thought about the birthdays he had celebrated while I worked. The sneer on his face in the courtroom. The debt he had tried to drown me in. Just as brother and sister. He did not want a sister. He wanted an audience. He wanted someone to witness his redemption arc so he could feel like the protagonist again. He wanted absolving. I typed 3 words. No. Good luck. Then I blocked the number. I sat at my desk in my quiet, peaceful office. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the floor. I opened my laptop and pulled up the spreadsheet where I tracked the scholarship fund. We could afford to send 3 more kids to school next year. I thought about Grandpa Arthur. I thought about the binder, the blue ink in the margins, the quiet lessons on the porch. He had seen me when I was invisible. He had given me the tools to save myself. The revenge was not taking their money. The revenge was not the eviction or the bankruptcy. The revenge was that I was happy. I was whole. And I had built a life that they could not touch, could not claim, and could not ruin. If you were in my shoes, would you have forgiven them when they lost everything, or would you have walked away like I did? Let me know in the comments. And if this story resonated with you, hit subscribe. We are just getting started.